Welcome to the Blue Ocean Solutions Podcast, where we dive into real conversations with business owners, innovators, and industry leaders shaping the future of clean tech, construction, and the renewable energy sectors. I'm Kreel Hutchinson, your host. Our guest today is Luke Schuette, the founder and CEO of ReNüTeq in the greater St. Louis area. Today, we're going to be discussing how he took a fantastic idea and turned it into a US-based manufacturing success story of creating structural engineered bamboo products. Specifically, we're going to explore how this new product could dramatically green up the data industry, an example of true innovation and forward thinking. Welcome to the podcast, Luke.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm super excited to have this conversation. So, why don't we start at the beginning? Why don't you introduce yourself to our audience, your role at the company, and the history of what you've been doing there?
Appreciate it. Yeah, I'm the founder and CEO, like you said, of ReNüTeq, which is focused on specifically a material technology, called structurally engineered bamboo. And this material technology, because of its performance and because of how we manufacture it into a truly engineered and precise product, we're able to go into markets and industries that typically you would not see natural materials. And one of them, like you said, is data centers.
Fantastic. So tell us the arc of your entrepreneurial journey, because when I first heard about it, I was really impressed at like where you've started and where you've come to. So share the details.
This started back in college. I was an architectural student, following in my father's footsteps. My dad had his own architecture firm, since I was a small child. So I grew up in this very unique, I believe, a very unique upbringing of living on a farm, but yet my father had his own architectural practice. So it was this interesting mix of professionalism on the site, going to meetings with him, running blueprints, seeing drawings, and all of this technical information all around me, but yet contrasted with growing up on this farm. So I would be out taking care of livestock out in the fields and all of that. So it was a very unique upbringing, which I think kind of formed this path. And so, like I said, I went to college and studied architecture at Southern Illinois University. And I was greatly inspired by the engineered wood industry and specifically one of my professors, John K. Dobbins, who is at the highest level of like structural engineering and was just an amazing professor. And so he really encouraged me while I was in college to just excel within the engineered wood industry and understanding how beams and engineered products are produced. And very quickly, I became fascinated with bamboo. Actually, when I was on a missions trip, I saw it growing down in Latin America. And so I came back my senior year of college and was just so excited about the idea of, building upon technology that had been developed in this country for over 40 years. The engineered wood industry, from glue lams to what you see Weyerhaeuser producing, you have LVL, PSL, all of these engineered wood products that had been in the market at that point for about 35 years and still considered relatively new, but yet not as new as the entire industry. I decided essentially while I was in college that I wanted to explore the idea of taking this higher performance raw material, bamboo, and applying all of this technology that had been built upon for generations, essentially from back 150 years ago to the introduction of engineered wood, and then now the adaption and the integration of this adhesive technology and everything into a new higher performance structural product.
That's fantastic. Now, when I first talked to you and you said bamboo, I was really thinking, okay, this is like something that needs to be imported. But you were actually saying that that is no longer the case. Can you tell, explain to the audience where you actually get the raw materials for the work and then go a little bit deeper into explaining what products you actually create in your manufacturing facility?
Yes, so there is an import process, but it's specifically in the Western Hemisphere. Most people, when they think of bamboo, they immediately go to Asia, Southeast Asia, India, even. It's an amazing discovery that this species called guadua actually grows in Central and South America. Guadua angusfolia kunth is the specific kind of phylum and genus of this species that is known throughout the world through a lot of research from MIT, Cambridge, as the highest performance bamboo species in the world. And so this species, guadua, is natively growing in these Latin American countries. So we have set up our entire supply chain to bring in raw slats into the United States and into here in our manufacturing facility here in St. Charles. We process them and engineer them into these structural grade components. And to answer your question, some of these components are indeed integrated into premium architectural applications such as primary structural elements, glass systems from curtain wall to structural glass, roof glazing, and then also solar charging infrastructure. We did a pretty high profile project with BMW where our materials were integrated with stainless steel hardware. And we can share more information about that later. But what we're focused on today is how our materials have integrated into data centers. And they've integrated quite seamlessly as a replacement for aluminum, steel, and plastics, specifically in the server racking and pack wall or hot air containment units. And so, in wall systems. So these are our primary applications that we're exploring and really focused on because, as you know, this is a very strong focus for the industry. And one of the challenges for this industry, the data center development industry, is how do we integrate materials that are more ideal, more friendly to the planet, and can also provide the performance and technology achievement required.
I love the vision. Thank you for sharing that. One question I have then regarding that would be, what are some of the regulatory or the bureaucratic hurdles that you face? And how are you overcoming them with introducing, basically a new type of construction structural material?
Thank you for asking. I kind of skipped over that piece, but specifically for the structural industry, specifically for buildings, you're dictated by a lot of regulatory entities, primarily ASTM, which is the American Society of Testing Materials. You have the ICC, which is the International Code Council. There's ISO. And then you have also these third party regulatory bodies such as APA. And what we've done starting back in 2007 into 2009, we presented to this executive committee within ASTM 5456, and we added SEB into the International Building Code. So essentially, we started in 2008, 2009. It was officially added in 2012. So those builders that are out there can open up your IBC International Building Code and open up to ASTM 5456, and you'll see our products in there. So that was a huge milestone, absolutely imperative to us being able to be successful, not only in the construction industry, but likewise also the data center industry. If you're a producer, a manufacturer in the United States or internationally, there's always some reference to ASTM, whether it's steel, aluminum, plastics. There's all kinds of regulations, whether it's adhesives, and they all reference ASTM. So our products comply to the Structural Composite Lumber Division, ASTM 5456.
That's fantastic. So, for our audience to get a better idea of the size of your manufacturing, the size of your business, take us a little bit into, how many employees, what does the manufacturing facility look like, even ballpark revenue, so we can kind of see the scale of where you guys are operating from.
Yes, I appreciate that. This is the first time that our entire operation has all been under one roof, from the milling process all the way to the finish and engineered products. And I'm standing right here in this, it's about a 90,000 square foot facility. We have a 42-foot long by 10-foot long press that is fed with our process slats is about 380 feet per minute. We run these slats into the press. We put it under pressure in about 60 minutes. And we're doing multiple press cycles per day. And this process essentially just goes nonstop. So the press is running, the slats are being fabricated, and we're creating what is we call a billet stock or lamb stock, which is our basic structural material technology as a component. Those materials can then be cut down via, straight line rip saw. We plane them, we mill them, and then obviously we do in some fashion dependent upon the project, we'll do secondary lamination to create larger beams. But then we can also take them into another production line, which is over to my right over here, that is focused on componentizing of smaller parts. And so this operation is specifically focused on the glass industry as well as the smaller componentizing process for data centers and hack wall infrastructure. But we're relatively small. We've only been in this facility for about a year, which means, all of this that you're seeing that's been invested very heavily into has only been online for this facility for about 7, 8 months. So this has been a very drastic ramp up from, previous operations. If, those that do a little research, you'll learn that I actually started my first entity in Illinois, sold off a division of that, and now ReNüTeq is officially the manufacturer here in the United States, here in St. Charles.
Congratulations. I'm sure going through all of those many cycles and years and landing here probably feels like a big accomplishment for all of your efforts.
It is. I tell you, it's not come without lots of challenges. It's a new material technology. It's a tangible thing. As you know, we had the internet boom. Now you're even hearing, whispers of other, technology and AI, kind of bubbles that, maybe the ROI is not as big. But what I've always believed, and for this company, is that if we're producing a high performance, tangible material technology, that it's going to be successful because there's just so much around in tech and things that you can't tangibly necessarily hold in your hands, that we're truly creating the product, we're creating the jobs. It's truly manufacturing here in the United States.
I love it. I think you guys are well positioned to continue to grow and develop. As we talk about trends, what trends do you see right now that are working for you, that you're riding the coattails of, that are really impacting in a positive way? And then what trends are challenging and causing friction in your vision for the business and its growth?
Yeah, I would say the trend that we're really focused on, not only just data centers, but if you take a step back and look at the manufacturing industries, whether it's the building industry, whether it's, the industrial componentizing industries, like what we're seeing within the data center industry, all of them want to integrate materials that are considered more renewable or more natural, whether it be a term that has been thrown around quite a bit, biophilic design. This is a term that's being integrated into buildings, whether it's the new data center that's being developed by Amazon, where they're integrating mass timber, to create a space that's more natural. Even the robotics components that we've developed that are just back in some manufacturing facility, the user and or the employee that stands at this, typically what would be a steel and aluminum kind of cold environment, just the integration of our materials, even in these very industrial kind of production oriented products, it actually uplifts the experience for those employees to have more of a natural material. And it's kind of built into us. When you're in a cold and stale environment with only concrete and steel, it does impact you. Whereas if you want to get away and relax, what do? You try to find some woods, a log cabin, build a fire, connect with nature, touch the grass. And this is where we feel like our materials really are making a strong impact, not only from a performance standpoint, a sustainability standpoint, but also this biophilic natural material experience for people.
Yeah, I would agree. How do you guys measure the SEBs and their measurable advantages over such as steel, aluminum, even human integration, or some of the aspects are like ROI for companies. Other times there is a human component, like people are feeling better, they're sticking around, there's less turnover, all those things. So how are you guys able to actually, like, if you have any data or metrics that you measure to be able to confidently put forward to in proposals to data centers and kind of open up those deeper conversations?
Well, one very technical aspect that I'll focus in on, which was brought to our attention actually by a third party manufacturer of server racking. They specifically reached out to us, and this has been over 2.5, 3 years of prototyping to learn about our materials specifically because of the thermal performance. Whenever you're dealing with the data center, specifically a hot air containment system and or server racking, you want materials that are thermally resistive and or, not a conductor. And what that means is if you have metal and steel and aluminum everywhere and you're trying to cool down the space, all of those materials that are conducting heat away from the servers are also causing the HVAC systems to be not as efficient. So if you can integrate materials that are more thermally resistive and not as much of a conductor like our SEV product, what you're able to do is then size down the HVAC equipment. Now we're talking about real money, because if you can size down these massive cooling systems, as you know, one of the biggest challenges with these data centers is to be able to keep them cool. And so if you can integrate materials that are naturally thermally resistive, but also meet all the structural performance measures as required for the structure, then you're making a huge difference on the bottom line of the whole development. So that's where things really started from a technology standpoint, quite technical. But I would say the other side of it is that there is this notion from, the big five or the big seven, whichever companies you want to reference, that are building out these data centers, they all have made very strong proclamations and commitments to building out these structures as sustainably as possible. And that's where our materials are absolutely ideal.
I can see your value proposition makes a lot of sense for this new highly, it's developing very quickly, the data centers, but also I think you're reading it correctly. These companies have suggested that they want to do things differently in the past and make sure this enormous energy demand, we can offset it in certain ways. And what better way to do it would be a high performance, structural, bamboo material that has all the advantages that you just laid out. So I think it's fantastic. As we then flip the side of the conversation, what are some of the challenges that you're experiencing in your business to limit growth or getting the message out there?
Yeah, initially, I thought, hey, this is a pretty big jump from virtually outsourcing various different elements to bringing everything all under one roof. Obviously, we have a huge investment into this facility. But I'll just tell you, the interest and the excitement for our materials has not been the problem. We have projects spanning out essentially for the next 3, 4 years. Our biggest challenge is ramping up our operations to be able to meet those demands. And like, we're discussing the data center industry, they may not even talk to you unless you've already either supplied to some mega project or you're already a supplier to one of the contractors that has already done multiple mega projects. So to get into that field, to be able to supply and meet the demand requirement, you have to be producing a lot of products. So as I mentioned, we've only been online truly for about 6, 8 months here. And so all of our energy is focused on optimization of our production. And that's through automation, it's through good people. We do have a great employee base here in the Midwest, St. Louis area, but we really need more people that are not only knowledgeable about the data center markets, but also the engineered wood industry, the production industry, the manufacturing industry. It's more difficult than what you could imagine to find the right people. We have great companies like Boeing and these major manufacturers around us, but those markets are different and they're kind of focused on different things. So there's not really any engineered wood manufacturing in the Midwest. If you did a little research, you'd see they're all on the border of the West Coast. They're out of Canada, they're on the East
Hmm.
Coast. There's a couple dotted in the Midwest, either north or south, but there's nothing in the Midwest. And so we're really pulling and trying to get that employee base of experts and professionals to join the team and to really help us move this to the next level.
Well, hopefully we've got some of our audience who are they're peaking up and light bulbs are going off for them, that there might be piquing some curiosity here. You brought up a couple points there. One being, it sounds like it's a great opportunity, right, for you to be the major mover in the area. Secondly, it also sounds like where you are and where you want to be to compete for these larger contracts and to compete in the ecosystem that sounds like you want to get into, what needs to change? What needs to happen on your side?
Well, frankly, we will need to invest quite heavily more into our operation. Like I said, we've already done quite a bit, but we're really ready for the next phase. In order to be able to supply to these projects efficiently, like I said, more automation, more efficiencies right here in the main production facility, but also we are strategically looking to establish distribution facilities into key markets where we're perceiving that data centers, architectural, and just general business is planning to develop, whether it be the Southwest, the Southeast, likely probably in California, somewhere upstate, potentially, into New York area. And so we have identified key regions, and we're fine with taking it one step at a time, but they are absolutely imperative. Being in the middle of the country has its advantages. We can deliver products pretty efficiently in about 5 business days to either coast, but to these projects, as you know, are very high demand. And so ramping our production, our volume, our efficiencies here, and then also having stock on the ground at these key locations in different parts of the country. Also, Europe is a huge focus for us. We have gotten a lot of interest for our materials into Europe. We have projects in Europe. We've done projects in Europe in the past, but now because we're producing per our proprietary processes, all of these efficiencies have been coming online. We have a lot of interest developing in Europe. So obviously, we would need to establish distribution infrastructure and fabrication infrastructure in Europe as well.
So we've spoken in depth around the data centers as being like a great fit. But let's pull it back and show the audience a little bit more of a wider span of like, who is your ideal client and how best do you serve them currently?
Yes. So our ideal client is developers, architects, engineers. There's not an engineer on the planet that won't look at our structural data documentation and be blown away at the performance of our materials. As a natural material, we're looking at 2 times, 3 times the structural capacity of many other materials typically integrated, whether it be structural engineered wood, all these other engineered wood products. When you look at aluminum and you look at the thermal performance, typically aluminum is utilized in glazing. So if a structural or a glazing or facade engineer looks at our numbers, they see the structural value, but then also the contrasting low thermal numbers to where we're able to increase the performance of these systems, then we would look at those.
That's fantastic. Do you have an example of a case study or a company that you've worked with and you've kind of taken them on their like hero's journey?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it's their hero's journey, but I would like to reference the BMW project. It is such a showcase of what we were able to execute on. Essentially, this all started in 2013. We were approached by BMW specifically to integrate our materials with the launch of the i3 and the i8. And so they asked to supply materials to a structure that they had designed and launch it out in Malibu for these new electric vehicles. And so, of course, we were focused on architectural applications just generally, but we had not even thought about how ideal our materials were for solar structures or solar canopies. And how there's this contrast of tech with natural materials, and you have a renewable energy and balanced with a renewable material technology. Obviously, BMW caught that immediately and was very interested in working with us. So we ended up supplying to an initial project out in Malibu. That structure traveled the world as like a showpiece for the launch of the i3 and the i8. And then subsequently, we designed, actually, I got to design a more of a commercial solution for BMW in the form of a 2 position, a 4 position, an 8 position EV charging canopy that can be deployed not only to dealers, but also to other entities. This project was such a resounding success because we were able to take and develop a design and deploy this structure in about 4 months. But then what was exciting is that when the structure arrived, Our focus as a company has always been on the fit and finish and also the efficiency for installation on site. And so we were able to send this structure and it was able to be built in one day. And this blew away everyone, especially BMW, to where we could deploy this permanent structure that could then be assembled in one day and have this structural showpiece, not only showcasing their electric vehicles, but also showing the innovation of sustainable material technology along with solar generation.
Wow, that sounds like such a great creative project. Congratulations on that study. Amazing. I'm curious, how do you then currently find more ideal customers like that? What is your marketing looking like today?
I've participated in multiple different marketing strategies. Obviously, you think of when you have a material like ours, you want to go to the building industry trade shows. And we've done very well at those. And we went through the pandemic though, and there's all this transition of where people are getting their information. And you spend 60 grand on some beautiful trade show booth, and then the people that come may or may not be buyers. They may or may not be truly going to move forward with anything. Maybe they just want the continuing education for the specific show, and they're just coming around and looking. And there's lots of oohing and eyeing. But does that translate into real business? So whenever BMW moved forward with this project, you have this one of the top most valuable brands in the world. If they talk about your product, it's worth like 1,000 trade shows that I could go to, under the radar and spending all this money. So my new purpose, my new plan is to land these projects, these showcase projects, execute them on execute on them perfectly, and then have this third party talk about us. And you know, fortunately for us, we do attract these premium brands, from all different corners of the market, whether it's development or tech or whatever it may be.
Perfect. Hey, so as we move looking into the future now, what's your company's biggest strategic priorities over the next 6 to 12 months?
I would say, for me personally, I am obviously trying to build a really strong team. Mm, we've all read all the books, or at least heard someone else talk about the books, where you got to get the right people on the bus. You've got to build this team that's just solid and that you can just really grow with. So it's from the executives, the technical people, building up that team, but also obviously finding ideal, financial partners too, because what we're talking about doing and the size of the growth that we're looking at. And so for us to truly compete and to truly be a major player in some of these markets, we do need to invest more just in overall infrastructure.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, aside from just manufacturing operations and doing all the basic things of getting the product out there, it's going to be a heavy focus with me and my team on providing technical solutions, truly turnkey of a kitted solution where, if someone is interested, they really don't have to do too much other than just submit the project. We will do all the shop drawings in-house, which is what we're doing now. We do a quick turnaround on all of our quoting, understanding and piecing together this ideal program level type of supply, whether it's a one-off or prototyping and then moving that into supply, and truly being able to educate and present the ideal solutions for our materials. Our materials are not ideal everywhere. Steel, aluminum, concrete, all these other materials will always have their great place within the building industry. Our materials supplement that, they advance it, and we want to educate them very efficiently on how they can do it.
As we move towards the end here, maybe leave us with where people can find you for more information, and also your final thoughts on where you think the industry is going and your placement.
We're just right here in the Midwest. If you'd like to come and check out the facility, that's kind of the first thing that I've been waiting essentially half of my life to be able to say, is that we have everything all under one roof. So it's pretty exciting. Whoever the potential client or customer might be who's looking to integrate our materials, we can show you how it's being manufactured right here in the United States, right in the Midwest, actually, near St. Louis projects. But I would just request that the developers, the engineers, the architects, if they can look at this and say, hey, as an architect, I've been specifying aluminum and steel nonstop for 60 plus years. Maybe I'll step back. Maybe I'll look at timber. Maybe I'll look at this new product called SEB, structurally engineered bamboo, and see how it can impact the project, not only from a performance metric, but even from cost. When we were doing our initial prototyping and work within the server racking industry, we found that we were able to actually beat the costs of a lot of these materials that are being imported. A lot of these components are coming from Asia. And so producing in the United States, whether it be just baseline cost analysis, we can be quite competitive. But even when it relates to logistics, people always underestimate the cost of logistics. We're right in the middle of the country. And so we can supply to projects in the United States and even very efficiently to Europe from our facility right here in St. Charles.
Hey, fantastic. Luke, where can people find you on LinkedIn or your website? You want to provide that information for the audience?
Yeah, a search of structural engineered bamboo. We are the absolute world leader within this space. So if you just type that in, you'll see that we dominate that space because we're the only ones that added the material into the structural standards. But also our company name, ReNüTeq. If you just type that in, it'll pull up all of our website and social media accounts. And certainly, feel free to reach out directly. You can call us, and I would love to hear from you, your ideas.
Okay, perfect. And of course, I will leave the links in the show notes for the audience. You can also find Luke on LinkedIn, and I'll have that link down below. Luke, I really appreciate you being on the show today, the podcast. To our audience, if you found value in this conversation, make sure to like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with potentially an architect, an engineer, or a manufacturer who needs to know about structural and engineered bamboo. Thank you once again for being on the Blue Ocean Solutions podcast. Have a great day, everyone.